to kind of cover some of the, to cover sort of the big topic around what these changes actually mean, especially for people that are thinking about retiring either before the end of the year or sometime in the near future. And then also let Mike kind of give some other quick presentations about sort of the sort of top issues with planning retirement. And also, I know that Mike is also more than willing to set up time to talk with you individually. So he's provided his contact information. It's in those emails that everybody got, but if you don't have it for whatever reason, we have it and we can give it to any member that wants to get back in touch with Mike. So, hey, Mike, thanks so much for being here. We had about 25 people sign up. I'm seeing 24 people in the group, so I think we're safe to start. We may get some more people as we go. We just gave a short introduction of you as you were logging back in, and we really appreciate you being here. So I'll just let you go. And then at some point, if you want to do Q&A, I think if people know how to do the hand raising in Zoom, please use that function. If not, try and be reasonable in shouting out your questions and we'll try and deal with them. And again, we have just an hour, so let's try and be concise with our questions. Thanks a lot, Mike. Take it away.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. You can hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I got a couple of people that have said yes. Kieran, can you hear me? Okay, cool. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Then yeah, I know this is kind of what I'm going to be referring to as like an emergency meeting of Parliament. Right before the end of the year here. It's never easy when this stuff happens. But I just want to give you guys the most accurate information that I possibly can. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I don't know everything, but I know who does. So if you have a question and I don't know the answer, I should be able to direct you to the people or person that you would need to contact in order to get that information. But I also, I want to dispel some rumors, I think, that I've heard here and there. I want to talk about how the whole thing really does work from a nuts and bolts standpoint. So again, really all it is about you guys all individually making the best decision for yourselves possible. So that's what we're kind of working on with this call here today. The last thing I wanted to mention, if we can do it in an orderly fashion, I mean, you got a lot of you guys, I'm recognizing a lot of the names here that I love questions. So if you can chime in with questions during the course of things and then immediately remute yourself if you're able to do that, or I don't know, Kieran, if you're able to kind of work as the point person for questions that people have, that'd be great. I want to try to get those going during this call here because a lot of you probably have the same questions. So let me first start by let's go over what is happening from a pension standpoint first. So what is happening is real, very, very real. The letter you got from AT&T/Fidelity is not necessarily a scare tactic. It's legit. So let me explain what that is and why it's happening. So if you recall from some of our meetings in the past, I would always talk about how that there's a embedded interest rate inside of your pension. It used to be modeled off of the GAT rate, which was called the Guaranteed Accounting on Tariffs and Trade rate. That was modeled off of the 30-year Treasury. And years ago, right around 2012, they changed that from the GAT rate to the PPA rate, which, shocker here, allowed them to pay you slightly less money. But that's the way that almost all corporations were going at the time. And really what it was in response to the ultra low interest rate environment we found ourselves in the mid 2000 and teens. When they did when AT&T, and again, and a lot of other big Fortune 500 companies transitioned over from your traditional legacy pensions like you guys had, which was just monthly, to a lump sum format, which occurred, if you recall, in 1998 for you guys. At that point, again, there was an embedded interest rate in there. The embedded interest rate was there to protect you. And the protection was, hey, I don't want to have to take my entire lump sum from my pension for working for 40 years and move it all into the stock market because I'm afraid that, of the volatility in the stock market. So they said, the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, said, hey, if the interest rate environment goes way low, you guys, AT&T, have to give your participants more money to compensate for the ultra low interest rate environment. So when interest rates went lower, you all were getting higher lump sum disbursements. That started again in 1998. So when they started the lump sum pension, do you remember where interest rates were in 1998? They were actually higher than they are now. So you could walk into a bank and get a 7% CD for 1 year. If you go ask for a 7% CD in a bank now, they think you're holding the place up. So that was where interest rates went over the last 20 plus years, went down, 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 down. So you were on the winning side of that, literally for 20 years plus now. Conversely, when interest rates go up, they can pay you less money from your lump sum. In fact, it's again embedded inside of that calculation. So depending upon how quickly interest rates go up, it can dramatically affect your lump sum to the downside. Because interest rates fluctuate all the time, they only lock them into your pension once a year. And again, that's like beginning of the year that happens. So that's why they sent out that letter and said, hey, if you're contemplating retirement, you might want to be aware that this is a real thing. So in that letter, it said that you had 15 to 30% potential downside in waiting from basically like right now until after January 1st on your lump sum pension. So that's real, so if somebody's been there for 30 plus years and is around 60, you might have 200,000 plus in your lump sum. If that's the case, realistically, could you lose $40,000 like in a month because of the recalculation? Yeah, you absolutely could. So if somebody is contemplating or was contemplating, and I have heard from some people that say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving in 2023 mid-year, I say, well, if you were considering the lump sum, which most people have been over the last bunch of years, when you're on the cash balance plan, you might want to reconsider doing it in 2022 because you're going to lose so much of your lump sum. It's essentially like you'd be working for free next year because you'd be giving up so much in your lump sum. So you might want to consider maybe doing it this year versus next year. I think that again, it's a real thing that people have to unfortunately kind of think about in making your decision here going into the end of the year. One more thing I wanted to mention right here too, and if you're taking notes, this is one thing I would definitely try to take a note on. And that is, if you haven't called Fidelity in a while, there is a manual calculation that sometimes needs to be done. So I've had people in the past call up and say, hey, Mike, I want to retire. I'm leaving tomorrow and I want to start my pension right away. And I go, okay, let's call Fidelity and talk to them, and call Fidelity, and Fidelity says, oh no, we haven't talked to you in a while. We don't have a calculation that's done for you in the system yet. Because when you get on, you're going to see a lump sum in there, but it's not always accurate. Sometimes they have to do what's referred to again as a manual calculation. So I would encourage anyone that hasn't done this yet, or hasn't talked to Fidelity specifically over the last several years, you're going to want to call Fidelity, and you're going to want to give them some fake dates. Well, the two dates that you need to give them are your last date of service. So that would be like your retirement date. And then the second thing would be, you're going to want to give them your pension commencement date. For a lot of you on this call that are on what's kind of referred to as the BCB1, Bargain Cash Balance Plan 1, you normally have to commence your pension at the beginning of a month. You can't just retire on October 15th and start your pension on October 16th. So that, and I normally tell everybody to do that the same way. It's just commence your pension on the first of the month. But the dates that I would input, and again, this is just for saving a calculation in the Fidelity system so that in the future it's calculated and you're good to go. Otherwise, what happens is what I was talking about earlier, somebody call up and say, hey, I want to retire tomorrow and I want to start my pension in 2 days. We need to call Fidelity. Fidelity says, we don't have something in the system for you. It's going to take us 2 weeks to get that number together. So you can't retire for 2 weeks. Now, then you can do it. Now, if there's no time crunch, no big deal. 2 weeks is not going to be make or break anybody. But in this scenario where we have a small time frame between now and the end of the year, you really kind of got to get it done so that you get your accurate numbers and they're in the system. And so what I've been telling people, again, use like a random date of November 15th, 2022 as your off roll date. And again, this is what I would write down if I were you right now is November 15th, 2021 as or 2022, sorry, as a retirement date. And then your pension commencement date as of December 1st, 2022. So 11/15/22 off roll, last date of service, and a November 1st, 2020, I'm sorry, 12/1, December 1st, 2022 pension commencement date. So if you input both of those things into the system, then it'll save it. Tell them to save it to your profile, and then it'll just be in there forever. And again, if you haven't gotten that done, I would highly recommend it because it's something that if you haven't had it calculated, they have to send back to their actuaries to have it calculated for you. The number that you would call is 800-416-2363. Again, 800-416-2363. That number has recently changed. It was a different number until about 6 months ago. So just be aware that that number too, if you had a different number from before, has changed recently. So call them and get that done. I think that's a huge first step for everybody to do. The other thing I'm going to talk about as I'm kind of talking about this, because I'm sure people are starting to have questions that you want to make sure you start asking. So let me throw a few things out there and then I'll open it up for a few questions to start things off here. But next thing would be that there's been conflicting information that we've gotten about when you would need to actually leave to lock in your rates for 2022. Again, you've heard me say that the pension commencement has to happen on the first of the month. That being said, obviously, if you're retired like December 15th, you can't really get your pension because they won't retroactively go back to December 1st. So you'd have to start your pension January 1st, and that would push you into the new year. And then that would give you the new rates, and that's where you would lose all the money. I've heard somebody tell me too that they talked to Fidelity and they told you that you had to retire on like November 1st or November 15th in order to get a pension commencement of December 1st to lock in the old rates. So I do know, like I've heard in the past too, if you're on the BCB2, which not a lot of people on this call probably are, but if you are, you can start your pension without it being on the front end of a month. So again, there's so many different things that I've been hearing. I am not confident enough to say exactly what you need to do. I would, if you are thinking about possibly doing this, I'm just going to tell you, you're probably going to have to call Fidelity and talk to them, or even your benefits coordinator, which I think is maybe Lizzie Baker. I go to Kieran or Sherry and ask who they think that you guys might have to talk to for that information. But there's just so much info flying around on that I don't want to give anybody any bad info. So again, just to frame this one more time, is if you are contemplating taking this year's calculations, which needs to be done by the end of the year, I thought, and I feel like I've done it in the past, that you would have to retire prior to November 30th and then turn it on December 1st. But I would definitely reach out to Fidelity and confirm that with them so that you don't miss out, because if you're only doing it because of this calculation, you don't want to miss out on that money. So that's something that I would highly recommend everybody do if you can. Just talk to Fidelity and try to get a good person on the phone. Unfortunately, you don't always get that, but that'd be important to do. So all right, I'm going to go through these comments in the chat line here and see if I can answer any questions, if there's anything there, if anybody wants to chime in. Okay, question.
Hi,
this is a huge question. Yeah, go ahead.
Just had a quick question here because I wasn't able to sign into the Zoom chat, whatever room. So I'm just audio only. But I was wondering if you do cash in, would that push you into a whole new tax bracket? When I spoke with Fidelity, they said that it would take, like anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to actually get your lump sum. So I'm just confused, like, would that push you into an entirely new tax bracket within this year? Does it count as income for this year, or is it calculated for next year?
Yeah, I can answer that question. Yep, no problem. So thank you for the question. So the majority of people that separate from service that take their lump sum pension, if you're going to lean that way, are rolling it over. So if you're rolling over your lump sum pension, you're putting it into an IRA, and that is non-taxable event. So that means that in that scenario that you talked about, pushing it up into a different tax bracket, that's not going to happen to you unless you fully just take it and put it into your name and you want the money and you're going to go spend it somehow. If that's the case and you put it in your pocket, then yes, you are going to pay taxes, and depending upon your age, potentially a 10% IRS early withdrawal penalty. Nobody really recommends doing it that way. I recommend doing it via rollover, and if you do it, again, it's a tax-free transaction. You're just rolling it from one retirement account to another retirement account, and there's no taxes due.
Can you roll part of it?
Yeah, to my knowledge is you can't. So the best way to go about doing it is if you need. So this has come up multiple times. Let me give you an example. So I had somebody that's like, yeah, I've got $150,000 lump sum. I need $30,000. But so I guess I'm just going to cash out on the whole thing. I'm like, no, don't do that. Because if you do, then you can't stick it back in a retirement account. So the best way to go about doing it is you can roll money, all of it, over into an IRA. And once it's in the IRA, then you can take a disbursement of what you need. The time frame to your question earlier too was it's actually 6 to 8 weeks is how long they tell you it takes to get the pension. So anybody that retires this year anyway is not going to see a pension check until next year, but it doesn't mean it's on next year's numbers. It still can be on this year's numbers, but you will not get it for 6 to 8 weeks, most likely.
Okay.
Any other offshoot questions on that, or does that answer everything you had?
That pretty much answers. I still have an outstanding loan on my 401k, and I don't think that rolling it over would take care of that loan, correct?
So, yeah, I'll answer this one too, because a lot of people have these 401k questions too. And then I'm going to go to a question that was in the chat about the annuity instead of the lump sum. I'm going to focus on that next. Sure. So, yeah, the 401k is loans. Once you separate from service, you can continue to make those loan payments. You just have to work out a payment plan directly with Fidelity, and then they'll still pull money from you, but instead of it coming from your check, it'll come from your checking or savings account monthly. And you can continue that, from my knowledge, I think it's all the way up to 6 years from the date that you initially took your first loan from the plan. So now another thing you can do is what's referred to as a strategic default on your 401k loan. So how that works is, let's say you leave the company, you've got $145,000 in your 401k with a $10,000 loan on it. People say, well, I'm going to pay this $10,000 loan back because it's my money and I want to make sure I keep it, and I'm just paying myself back. And I get that. You're right. That's true. Pound for pound, that's what you'd want to do. But on the flip side, if you're looking at it and saying, man, I still have to make another $500 a month payment for the next, 2 years on this almost, or $400 a month payment for 2 years, I'd rather not do that if I don't have to. I'm going to do what's called a strategic default on that. A strategic default means that you're just telling them, I don't want to pay this loan back. Make it taxable to me. Depending again on your age, it might be 10% plus ordinary income. So you're always going to pay ordinary income on the amount that you on the amount that you borrowed from your 401k. So it instantly makes that taxable if you default on it. And no, it does not affect your credit. That's a question I get from people too. Just the word default freaks people out, but it does not affect your credit. Then instead of having to pay $10,000 back over the next 2 years, you just basically owe ordinary income tax plus potentially a 10% penalty if you're under 59 and a half. Again, that all being said, it might be 20 to 30% probably. So on $10,000, I tell people, would you rather pay $3,000 and get rid of it, or $10,000 back to you in your own account? And some people say $10,000 back to me in my own account. And I say that, yep, that's the right answer. And other people say, nah, I'd rather pay $3,000 in taxes and never have to deal with it again. And I say, okay, I get that too. So it all makes sense to me, but that's the answer to the question.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, no problem. All right. So massive question that was just asked by Peter is, if you take the annuity, what would the effect be? And to answer and that's another massive thing to know, the annuity is not affected by this interest rate environment like it is the lump sum. So in fact, the monthly annuity will actually go up a little bit next year because of the changes in interest rates. And then you also get obviously age and years of service and all that fun stuff. It is not affected like the lump sum is. So yeah, if anybody is contemplating taking the lump sum over the, contemplating taking the monthly over the lump sum, then yeah, it that you won't have to worry about from an interest rate perspective. That all being said, I just do want to mention too, again, this is just, I also, as we go through this stuff, I want to talk to you guys about kind of theories behind these thought processes. And one of them is this. So most people on the cash balance plan, or no, let me even go back further. I think all of you know people, and there might even be one or two of you on the phone, but although it's not very prevalent anymore, there is a few people used to be on the legacy pension. That was the old school pension. You had to have 15 years prior to July 1st of 1998 to be considered on the legacy pension. So again, there's not a ton of legacy people still working with AT&T, but that was just, you had the option to do a lump sum or a monthly. Because the monthly or the lump sum had just started and the monthly had so many years behind it, those people had their monthly was so much better than their lump sum, it wasn't even fair. So like almost nobody that was on the legacy pension took a lump sum. Everybody took a monthly. Then the next plan that was in place is the BCBP1, and now there's also a BCBP2. There might even be a BCBP3. But what it is you guys are on the cash balance plan. The majority of the people on this call, the first one, because of where interest rates shot down at the beginning of the 2000s, you might have be thinking to yourself, well, everybody that I see that leaves takes a lump sum. So that must be better to do. And that has been true. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's taking a lump sum. Everybody has to kind of do their own situation and look at it and talk about pros and cons and maybe crunch some numbers. And there's a lot that goes into it. What other income you have, whether you're married, debts, how long you want to work, what your Social Security is. There's a lot to consider. But all things considered, most people in your position were taking the lump sum. The reason, again, is because of the interest rate environment. So since the interest rate environment is now changing, does that mean more people are going to consider the monthly a little bit harder than they had in the past? big time. So that's the thing that's going to start happening here. Whereas everybody in your position has thought, all right, lump sum's better. And it has been because of the interest rate environment. Now more people are going to start maybe saying, or taking a hard look, let's just say, at the monthly annuity versus the lump sum because of these interest rate fluctuations. So again, to answer your question that was proposed, no, the lump sum is the one the lump sum is the one that is affected by these interest rate changes. The monthly is not. Okay. Another rumor. So you guys may not have heard some of these, but I hear them all the time. So I'll just kind of get out in front of them. Another rumor I've heard from people when it comes to the cash balance plan versus your pension is, I want you to know that your lump sum and your monthly have no relationship to each other whatsoever. You just get to choose one or the other. Because I have heard from people have said, well, why would I choose the monthly if it runs out at a certain time when I reach the amount that I have in my cash balance plan? That's not a thing. So again, let me explain what I mean by that. So a lot of people have looked and said, all right, I have 100 and these are just made up numbers, just, but people say I've got 120,000 in my lump sum, or I can take $1,000 a month. Like, why would I want to take $1,000 a month when it means that once I take out $1,000 a month, which is $12,000 a year, which means over 10 years is $120,000. If I live longer than 10 years, then I'm going to run out of money. And the answer is that's not true. Once you take the monthly, it's locked in for the rest of your life. And as you guys, I think, mostly know, there's also survivor options for spouses, and there's one 10-year survival option for non-spouse. So once you lock in your annuity payment, it's locked in forever. So until death do you part. So you may end up, I'll say this, you will not outlive your monthly pension if you choose to take a monthly pension, which is, again, a rumor that I've heard in the hallways over the years. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. All right. I'm just going to read a couple of things out loud. Charlie here has said that they spoke to the retirement benefits coordinator and they told them last day possible to end employment to get a 12/1 commencement would be 11/30. And again, that's what I thought it was. But again, I would totally go back to Fidelity and just triple cross your T's and triple dot your lowercase J's in this situation, because it's a big one, to consider. And but that's what I thought, but I would just clarify it on a recorded line with Fidelity prior to doing it, would be my recommendation. All right, what else here? Do you have to leave service with the company to roll your pension to another place? Yes, you do. All right, let's see. Yeah, Sherry, you mentioned there's two really important people. Lizzie Baker is the career support coordinator. She actually, to my knowledge, when you guys had a VTP offer that just happened to the teleconferencing people, I think they usually, that's when the support career support coordinators come out and do their thing. And they comment on a lot of different things. There's some different options that come out when you guys have VTP and surplus events, that you have like enhanced benefit options when it comes to them that can be taken advantage of, which I'm not even going to begin to talk about now because it's irrelevant. Yeah, she's a great resource. And then Kim Wilburn is a phenomenal resource too. And I know that Karen and Sherry have their info. Kim, I send a lot of the people to for like healthcare questions. She's the best when it comes to that stuff, and she's dangerous with just about every area of your benefits. But specifically with the health insurance, because that's such a hornet's nest that people have to figure out and shake out too. One more thing that's worth kind of commenting on right now, and again, I normally when they had the VTP offer with teleconferencing, I did my AT&T pre-retirement workshop and went through like everything. But I think, again, that might be kind of overwhelming for people right now. I just kind of want to answer questions for you guys. So it's something we may be able to do later down the line. But I think right now I just want to comment on things that are in front of you and important. Another one would be like the service pension / benefits eligibility. You guys have all heard that magic number is 75. And, you know, it works almost all the time, but it's not all the time 75 between years of service and your between your age and years of service. Like as a for instance, for whatever reason, 60 and 15 doesn't work. You know, that adds up to 75 every time I punch it into a calculator, but it doesn't work for benefits and service pension eligibility. So, you know, just know that, because I have talked to a couple of people in the past that said, Mike, I'm so excited I'm gonna be able to retire next year. I got my 15 years and 60. I'm like, oh man, you got to work another 5 years. I'm so sorry. Like, that's just how it is. But in a lot of other cases, it does, again, it works. You know, if you've got age 55 and 20 years, you're there. If you got 30 years at any age, you're there. So if you were lucky or unlucky enough, I guess, depending upon how you look at it, to start working at AT&T at 20, you know, you'll get your 30 years in at age 50, and you can go at any time after that with no, with all your benefits and all that jazz and everything that you want. Another question I get from people is, as far as my pension goes, if I'm taking a monthly, do I get a hit on it if I take it at some time before 65? Because your pension is basically built off of retiring, but maybe kind of taking it at age 65. It's just always been that way. So you kind of lose money by taking it early. I don't like to call it lose money or a penalty, which I know Fidelity kind of refers to it as that sometimes. I just kind of refer to it as like early retirement, because remember, it's like Social Security is very similar in that Social Security you can take at age 62, or you can take it at any time you want after age 62. It ratchets up literally slightly every single day. So you're not getting more Social Security by retiring at 63 than you would, 63 and 11 months or 62 and 11 months. You get a little bit more every single day, but it doesn't ratchet up on your birthday is what I'm saying. And then, so a lot of times when you get those letters, it says, hey, at 62, you get this, at full retirement age, you get this, which for most people on this call is like between 66 and 67. And then at age 70 is when it maxes out. They say, hey, if you wait all the way to 70, this is how much you get. Look at how much more you get. So maybe you should defer it until age 70. Your pension kind of works the same way, in that every year you kind of wait on it, and it usually goes up a little bit more. Again, crunch the numbers. You got to crunch the numbers. I mean, you could push it back as far as possible and just make all this money. But at some point, it's like you're just trying to maximize what you have versus the amount of time we all have in this earth, which unfortunately we don't really know. So you just try to make the best decision you can with the information that you have in front of you. So I know I've talked to some people too that say, hey, I've got 27 years and I know I don't have pension eligibility yet. And I go, well, how old are you? And they tell me, and I go, no, you do actually. You have benefits eligibility because you've got the time, you got the service, and you got the age. So it works most of the time, but not all the time. But that was just one more thing that I wanted to mention as well. Let's see if I got any other new questions here. All right. Yeah, if you started with the company in 2003, then I'm not sure if you're on the cash balance plan, that's for sure. But I'm not sure if it's the BCBP1 or the BCBP2. There's slight differences with those that are really kind of, to be honest with you, not super relevant for the conversation. But the majority of the time, again, it's just you've got a lump sum component, you got a monthly component. They're calculated a little bit differently, again, which for this call is kind of irrelevant. The calculations for the lump sum is calculated the same way. It's just really kind of what goes into that plan that's a little bit different. if you leave before you meet the bargained retirement age service requirement, do you lose all the money in your pension? I don't totally understand that question. If you leave before you meet the bargained retirement age service requirement, do you lose all the money? So I don't know if this is going to answer this question or not, but as long as you've been with the company for 5+ years, you get all the money that's in your pension at that time, as well as all of the matching that you've received from AT&T in your 401k at that time. There's no, to my knowledge, again, I don't know of any situation where you're going to lose out on anything. Again, I think most people on this call have more than 5 years. I could be wrong, but if you do, you've got a pension and you've got your matches in your 401k, and you're not going to lose any of those. Let's see. So I think what I'm going to do here is let me pause and see if there's any other questions that anybody wanted to relay via chiming in, unmuting yourself and chiming in here.
I'll ask one just to get us going, because I know this group usually does have a lot of questions. So just to break up the shyness here, what are some mistakes you see people make regularly when they are planning retirement?
Okay, cool. Yeah, good question. So I tend to try to oversimplify things, because I think most of the time, not all the time for sure, but most of the time, I think people overcomplicate things. Retirement's pretty easy when you boil it all down. It's money in, money out, period. Like if you tell me how much money you really need on a monthly basis, I can tell you when you can retire in 20 seconds. So it's pretty easy, and getting those ducks in a row is not that hard. I mean, if you think about it, I know everybody on this call is probably making somewhere in the vicinity of $60,000-$70,000. Now that doesn't mean take-home pay. You guys got a lot of deductions, between healthcare, union dues, 401k, all that. Like, you got a lot that kind of goes into your monthly payments that are deductions, let's say, from your income. The majority of the people that I talk to are probably making between every 2 weeks $1,500 to $2,000. So if it's $1,500, if you think about it, that's what your take-home pay is every 2 weeks. That's $36,000 a year. So that means that you do have the ability, if you want to probably get a job making less money, but still making the same amount, if that makes sense. So it just depends on your kind of how much is coming out of your paycheck every time you get a paycheck. The biggest things that I see, honestly, like, to rally back and answer your question, would be, again, it's trying to figure out when your money in is going to match your money out. And again, you can really do that by way of looking at your pension, your estimates on Social Security, what your debt situation is, and all that fun jazz. But the things that I see people do is you're just stockpiling debt, and it just takes a long time to get out of it. A lot of people I've seen a lot of people, to your credit, honestly, and this is not blowing smoke, like in Minneapolis, during doing those classes and things like that, I've had people that were in awful places from a debt perspective, and they just flipped the switch on it and dedicated themselves to getting out of it, and they got out of it, and they are in a perfect place now. And it didn't take them tons of time. So I just want you to know, if you feel like you're a lost cause, you're not. If you have a situation where you just have gotten yourself into some trouble, you need to just buckle down and get it taken care of. But I see another, like, if I had to say too, and I shy away from telling people this to their face, but massive reason for people not being successful in retirement is helping out their own kids, or grandkids, even sometimes. And that's a slippery slope. I know none of us want to, if our kids or our grandkids need something, we always want to kind of be there for them. But I don't know if people are familiar with the Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. A lot of times the parents can just get whittled down to nothing, and then they have nothing for themselves in retirement. That honestly would be one of the biggest things that I've noticed, taking people away from or mistakes that they've been making as they get closer to retirement. Really, another thing right now, just based on your questioning, Kieran, would be like, not panicking when the market goes down. I get people that call me right now and go, I'm going to stop my 401k contribution every month. I should do that, right? Because the market's so bad. And I go, no, you should triple it if you can right now. Because if you think about it, the market's down, you're buying everything on sale. There's an old line that Warren Buffett used to say. He said, I'll never understand how when there's a sale at Kohl's, the place is jammed, but when there's a sale in the stock market, nobody wants to buy anything. And that's kind of what it's like right now. It's actually the perfect time to invest. So don't stop your 401k contributions. Don't go to all cash. Don't move your entire account balance into stable value. Those are things that kill people. Like the people that have the most money that I talk to at AT&T are the people that made an allocation and never changed it once. They don't look at it. They see it. It's the people that kind of pine over it and look at it a lot and overthink it, and they make bad decisions financially based on emotion. And that's always been a huge problem I've seen at AT&T is, people looking at how to invest in their stocks and just making too many changes. I think it's a real big mistake that I see people make. But again, the retirement, I guess the thing I would say to a lot of people here too is you really got to figure out, what you need on a monthly basis, which is really hard to do. So what I do is I tell people is rather than look around and say, all right, how much do I need every month? Because that's really hard. Every month changes. It's like, what do you have coming in every month? And are you living comfortably on it? So again, if it's $3,000 a month and you're living comfortably on it, great. That's a good number that we can use to kind of earmark your retirement when that day comes, and we can figure out when that day is going to be, like when you can retire, based very easily on pension projections and Social Security estimates. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. And does anybody else have any other questions kind of dovetailing off that or anything else we talked about today?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you said that the interest rates don't really affect the annuity or monthly payments all that greatly. So if you decided to just, quit, say, next year and take, instead of the lump sum, just take monthly payments, you're not going to be really affected by the drop or by the rise in interest rates all that much, will you?
Correct. You will not.
Okay.
So,
it's
another
mainly,
thing,
it's a lump sum issue. It's, I guess what I'm saying is that the lump sum issue is kind of what a lot of people are concerned about regarding the deadline and whatnot. So,
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and here again, let me throw out a couple of things, just things to continue to consider. The cornerstone reason for this call is really the lump sum change. So to refocus on that, yes, that's going to be affected. Most of you have been taking the lump sum because it's been so attractive, because interest rates have been so low. That's going to change, and it's changing right now. So if you were thinking about retiring, or if you're thinking now about retiring or leaving and going somewhere else because you will not be able to make the commute or don't want to do the commute, on the office change happening next year, which is, I think, what some other people are considering, maybe unfortunately leaving AT&T earlier than they wanted to. If you were thinking about taking the lump sum, again, this is why it's important that we're having this call, that number is going to change pretty dramatically. All things considered, I think, again, more questions that I hear from people is people say, all right, how concerned do I have to be about the solvency of AT&T if I'm taking my monthly pension? I'm worried about them continuing to pay me for the rest of my life. Okay, so to dispel that rumor, that I can't ever predict the future 100%, but you're supposed to be covered by PBGC. PBGC is the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. It's like FDIC insurance on your pensions. So if you start your pension and something happens to you, then your monthly pension is supposed to continue to be paid for by PBGC. Okay, just like FDIC insurance. Now, that's in theory. Okay. I think that is the case, and it's never not necessarily been the case. The people that you've heard that have gotten their pensions taken away from them, like, you know, Enron or United Airlines or Bethlehem Steel, those pensions were because people hadn't turned them on yet. Once you turn on your pension, you're covered by PBGC. So I'm not worried about the solvency of the AT&T pension. You have gotten one letter that was underfunded years ago, but you don't get a letter every year that it's underfunded. So I think you're in okay shape right now. I wouldn't really have that be the overwhelming determinant for me making my decision, although I do know it is part of people's decision-making process. And I think that people taking the lump sum versus the monthly should be based on your own comfort level. And if it's going to make people more comfortable having their money in their own pocket rather than in AT&T and worrying about their monthly payments, I get that. But I just don't know that it's totally founded in truth. So I do want to bring it up because, again, you're covered by more than just AT&T for your monthly pension. But it is a consideration for people that think about it.
And it could take years before the interest rates drop again.
You know, I mean, if you talk to anybody, they're talking about how it'll never get back to where we were again, but obviously never say never. But this is a more realistic interest rate environment than we were just in. So it'll take a long time. Yeah, I don't think it'll happen again in a while, like a pretty long time.
Okay.
Oh, another thing I want to bring up, just again, this is just stuff, food for thought. So somebody says, all right, I'm 55 years old. My lump sum is pretty decent. My monthly, though, is pretty low because I'm so young. But I would really like to take the monthly for some reason. I want to do that because I'd rather do that than the lump sum. One really nice thing to do that people, I think, don't consider as a potential option is if you start your monthly at any age, right, and you're still working, I would highly recommend using that pension money to do one of a couple of different things. A, pay off debt. So don't live on it. Use it to pay off debt while you're working somewhere else, or accumulate a savings in your bank. Because most people, when you retire, you'd like to have at least around $20,000 sitting in the bank if you can for liquidity purposes. So use that money for that. Or if you already got savings and you don't have a ton of debt, let's start making a monthly Roth IRA contribution. Because what you can happen in that situation is, let's say you got somebody that's 53, and we've done this before. Say you're 53 years old, you start your pension, it's $500 a month. Let's say $500 a month into a Roth IRA and build that up. Well, $500 a month is, you know, $6,000 a year. So that's going to be over 10 years. That's $60,000 with interest on top of it. You know, it could be $100,000 plus in a Roth IRA. And then when you retire, you turn off your Roth contributions and you add that $500 plus over to your Social Security. So now you've got your Social Security at, I'm making up a number, $1,600, your $500 worth of pension. So now you're really at $2,100 coming in every single month in fixed income from pension and Social Security. And you were able to put together $100,000 plus in a Roth IRA over those years from your pension. So you still have a lump sum to an extent on top of that monthly pension amount that you have. So just, again, outside the box type things that people can think about. Maybe I'm getting too much into the weeds on some of this stuff, but again, we have an hour, so I figured it can't be bad info if it's stuff that people have talked about in the past.
Hey, Mike, that calculation you'd mentioned about having Fidelity do that calculation for you so they have it in their records. How often should they do that? And is there anything you need to do? Because you have to create those dates. Is there anything you need to do, like if those dates are coming up and you're not going to retire, to like, does that lock you in any way by having them do that calculation with those dates?
Okay, so all right, so the Ask that one more time, and then I'll answer that question. Sorry.
Yeah, so you had mentioned that we should all, if we haven't done it recently, we should all have Fidelity do the calculation for our
Yeah,
pension.
yeah.
And then you mentioned that just they would have that on record then, which would help you presumably get to your money quicker when you did retire. But that in order to do the calculation, you needed to provide them with some, like I think you said, imaginary dates for when you might retire. And I'm just wondering
Right.
if by giving them dates, are you locking yourself into anything? Like
No.
if you don't retire those dates, and then often, like how often do you think we should call them to have them redo it or whatever?
Right. Okay. Sorry. Good question. So, number one, no, they're just completely arbitrary dates. So there's people that play around with their pension numbers like crazy. They'll have 30 different scenarios saved in the system, and that's cool. And it doesn't lock you into anything. So that's a good question. So you can play around with those numbers as much as you want. Even if you've got in and you've played around with numbers, unfortunately I make calls all the time, but I still haven't been able to figure out what the time frame is, and that you need to call every so often to make sure they're doing it manually. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say you want to probably call them every 2 to 3 years to get some just to make sure that your pension numbers are accurate in the system. That's to answer your question, that's what I would do. Because if you're playing around with them in the system, it doesn't mean that they're accurate. A lot of times, and when you call up Fidelity, they'll tell you either, yeah, we're good, you're good, just keep playing around in the system and all of your numbers are accurate, or they'll tell you that they haven't sharpened their pencils yet recently on your numbers, and that they have to do it in the back office, and then they'll go do it. And then once that's done, it's good on the system and you can start playing around with them again. But yeah, I'd say every 2 to 3 years. You probably want to get that done just to be on the safe side, because you don't want to get yourself into one of those positions where you're like, all right, I'm ready to retire right now. And then you call up and they're like, no, you can't. We need to manually calculate your numbers. And it's going to take 2 weeks. You don't want to have, if you're on the clock, you don't want to have to worry about that. But good question.
I see there's another question in the chat. I don't know if you saw that, about if you leave the company at age 45, can you start your monthly pension payments?
Yeah, you can start them at any age. A couple of things to consider though is if you don't have 30 years of service, which I'm betting at 45, hopefully for your sake you don't. If you don't have 30 years at age 45, you are going to lose, the way that the monthly pension is calculated, you lose a 0.5% for each full or partial month you retire prior to age 55. So and up to a max of 30%. So you'd actually be taking a pretty big hit on your monthly pension. That's the only caveat to your monthly pension, is if you have not attained 30 years of service or age 55, and you start a monthly pension, you're gonna get it penalized. So I know that all being said, I don't think I've had anybody at age 45 start a monthly pension, but I've had people in their early 50s start a pension because that's how they wanted to lean. And again, a lot of times we do that like Roth IRA thing or whatever. But they are still getting dinged because, again, unless you started at like age 20-ish, you don't have 30 years until, you're not going to have 30 years at age 50, So, but good question. Sorry. Oh, we got somebody that did start at age 19. Nice. Yes.
Yeah, I started when I was 21. So at age 50, and I already have 25 years, is that going to be a problem for me? Now I'm hearing I have to be 55 to not lose out.
No. So you say that again. You'll be age what? With how many years of service?
I have 25 years now, but I'm only 47. So I thought I had to only be 50 years old.
Yeah, you would have to be 50. You would get to your 35. I'm sorry, you would get to your 75, which you need for like the benefits eligibility. So that's one thing. But if we're talking about pension and getting dinged on your pension, you'd have to work one more year to get to your 30 years. And then you're not going to get dinged if you're taking your monthly at all.
Yeah, that was
But-
going to be the other question. What do we miss if we don't get 30 years? So 30 years is for your medical and to not get dinged?
No, it's 30 years is actually not to get dinged on your pension if you take a monthly. That's it.
Okay.
Or age 55. For your medical, you just need to get to that age 75 of years of service and age, and you'd be there at 50.
So if I
Hey,
tried to
I
retire
think-
now with the lump sum to not take the hit on the interest, then I would not get my medical.
Right.
Okay.
I'm afraid we're gonna have to wrap up. I know this has been a really
Okay.
short, condensed meeting. I really appreciate you making time for us, Mike. What's the best way people can get in touch with you if they'd like to have a relationship with you and about these retirements?
Yeah, if you have any other questions that you just want answered or whatever, if you want somebody to start crunching retirement numbers for you or anything, just let me know. My email address, I'll type in here. It's mike.sullivan@investwithwmg.com. mike.sullivan@investwithwmg.com. And then my phone number, and I'll give you guys my cell phone number, which I use a lot just because I'm traveling and stuff too here. So it's 630-660-8547. I'll put that in here too. And then if you have any other questions at all on any of this stuff, just let me know. And I'm willing to also make phone calls to Fidelity with people. And I know it's a tough decision right now with everything going on, and it doesn't make it easy that it's in such a short time frame. So just reach out to me if you have questions, and I appreciate you guys for putting the call together, and I'll be here if you need me.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks again, Sherry, for initiating this. Appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.